Hello, Rooted Wings community. We are officially live and so excited. We are going to be joined here in just a moment by a candidate for California governor who I am becoming more and more increasingly excited about. And I'm excited to introduce him to you, for you all to get to know him and to ask questions to him. You guys have been awesome with sending in some really strong and important questions as we go into this recall season in California. And I have put together a solid questionnaire list of questions to ask potential governors, because at this point in our state, we don't want soft leadership. We don't want powder puff questions that make us feel soft and fuzzy about a candidate where we don't really get to know the meat and potatoes. This is a meat and potato interview. We are going to hold Anthony's feet to the fire and ask him some hard questions and get his whole vision of the restoration of California and how he would go about policy making in California and correcting course. So with no further ado, oh, you guys are all awesome. So with no further ado, I am going to bring Anthony on. And just so you know, his website is linked above if anyone wants to go check that out after the interview. Okay, hang on one second. All right, guys. I am bringing Anthony in, and it usually takes just a second. We're live. Hello, Anthony. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. If during this interview I cut out, algorithms have been super hostile against this account. So if anything goes black or you can't hear me, just let me know. And then the same goes for the audience. If anyone notices anything getting a little weird, just let me know in the comment section. I'll be keeping my eyes there. But Anthony, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I've been excited to have a conversation with you for quite some time.
I'm really excited to have you on. I just wanted to kind of start by opening up the forum for you to introduce yourself briefly and just to give us kind of paint the broad picture of who you are, your family history, family life, and what got you here in a nutshell.
Sure, I'll try to condense it down. It's a long story, but you know, I'm the grandson of an immigrant who came from communist Cuba in pursuit of the American dream in the 50s. My grandfather came to this country, focused on achieving the American dream, did not want to depend on the system, did not want to be dependent on the government. He had just fled a country where the government controlled everything. So he became an entrepreneur, saved up money, started a blue-collar business that still exists in the heart of LA, South Central. My father still runs that business today. It's almost a 50-year-old company. They instilled that entrepreneurial spirit in me. I started my company 20 years ago. Small little 200 square foot office in Downey, California. I built that company up. It's now considered one of the fastest growing privately held companies in America. I have every reason to be here. I was born and raised in California. I met my wife in California. Our children are here. But I, like many others, had made plans to leave the state. I was going to Florida. I was breaking my lease here at our new headquarters. We were going to go to Florida. Going to Florida would mean a better quality of life, more revenue, more income, and a lot easier next season. But I've always told my children that if you can't find the solution, that you need to become the solution. And California needed a solution. And California needs something different. Doesn't need more politicians, doesn't need celebrities. We need an entrepreneurial mindset, someone that understands how to get the right people to the table to solve these complex problems. And we need somebody that's grounded in some moral fiber and grounded in faith, because I think California has lost its soul and we need to get back on track.
Excellent. Going just right into it, this interview is going to pull no punches. I want to really dig into you. So are you ready for some fire? Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Thank you for giving us that broad background. And I had noticed about your grandfather fleeing Cuba. How did that affect you in your in this current cultural moment where it seems like we are creeping more and more into larger government, more nanny states? given what you know historically because of your relationship to a
Sure.
relative who fled that?
So growing up, it wasn't until I was adult, I didn't know what it meant for my grandfather to leave that country. I didn't know the oppression they endured. They kept that from us, and he was a proud American and focused more on his pursuit of the American dream. I didn't realize how bad it was in Cuba till I personally started to visit. Over the last 4 years, I've been there about 7 or 8 times. And then I intimately and quickly understood why he fled. You're talking about one of the most beautiful countries with some of the most beautiful people, but that government controls everything. They control the media. Everything you see, everything you read, everything you hear is filtered through the government. They have complete and utter control over the healthcare system. They start to indoctrinate children at elementary school level with radical ideologies. There's no capitalism there. And they shut down churches. So for the last 5 or 6 decades, religious freedom was banned. Churches are now starting to open in Cuba, but they're only museums for tourists. You still can't openly worship. So I personally saw the oppression that was taking place over there. And I didn't really tie what they were experiencing to what we were experiencing until 2020. In 2020, when Newsom abused his power, shut down churches, started to indoctrinate our children in schools, shut down businesses, and now with a potential forced compliance of experimental drugs and vaccines and a vaccine passport, I looked at my wife and said, "Oh my God, this is starting to look like the country that my grandfather fled from," and it's scary. And if we don't, there's a small window of time to course correct. If we don't stand up now, if we don't stand up for our rights and our freedoms, they will be taken from us. Because what happens is it's a slow regression, right? They take one thing at a time and they get you comfortable and you get used to releasing your freedoms and giving your freedoms up. And that becomes normalcy. And then they have complete control.
Absolutely. And the erosion is very, very fast, as we've seen historically. I think people expect it to be one big firework. And usually it's little by little, but very quickly. And we are, in my opinion, we are living through what history has warned us about and everything that you just said. So going straight into that aspect of medical freedom, a question that continually comes up in this community is medical freedom. How have we gotten to a point now in California where within the last few years, SB 277 was passed through the legislature, and that was signed in 2015, which took away our choice to opt out of mandatory vaccines for schools. And then 276 and 714 followed in 2019. That took away our medical exemption. So first it was religious reason was taken away, philosophical religious. And then even the relationship between a patient and a doctor became infringed upon by government. It's a tricky situation because those were laws that were passed through the legislature, and then 276 and 714 was signed under Newsom. So I know your position on not being pro-mandatory injections of school kids, but how would you handle that from the seat of governor and working with legislature, or even what are your ideas, your plans forward in order to reverse that legislation?
Using the power and leverage of the position, right? So me being elected would show everybody in government now that the people have spoken and that they've gotten behind what it is that I'm standing for, which is the ability for you to make healthcare decisions at your dinner table, not in Sacramento. I'm really good at sitting at the table and bringing people together and negotiating, but I'm also really good at fighting. I'm also really good at exposing corruption. And what we'll do is, if by executive order or state of emergency, we, with the healthcare community that is standing behind my position, with doctors and physicians and scientists who agree that these experimental drugs are not FDA approved, that we are operating as guinea pigs for a lot of these pharmaceutical companies, with the science and the backing of the healthcare community, if I have to declare a state of emergency and use executive powers to stop it, I will.
So that would be more in relation to have to be careful with how I phrase things here because of censorship issues, but with the CV-19 injection is what you're referring to.
Correct.
There. So going back to education realm, which would be 277, 276, 714, which for a lot of parents in California.
I would use those executive powers to either freeze or begin to reverse that. If I couldn't reverse it immediately, we would freeze it and basically lock it up while we then fight the legal battle to reverse it formally.
Awesome. Great. Okay. Continuing on with that, then what about all of this, the virus mitigation strategies that are put into our schools right now? You have masking, plexiglass, hub learning, all of those things. What say you about all of that, and where do we go forward if you become governor of California?
I would reverse it and remove it because the science does not support our children wearing masks. The science and even, you know, physicians and even psychologists and psychiatrists wouldn't support the barriers and that we're using in schools to separate children. How we've approached this just publicly is absurd, but how that's trickled down into our most vulnerable, which is our youth and our children, is a crime. So again, standing with the healthcare community and scientists, we would stand against that. We would reverse that. There would be no mask mandate, period, especially not in our schools. The division that's happening and the measures that are taken to quote unquote protect our children are actually hurting our children. And we would reverse those and stop those immediately. I wouldn't allow a school to exist that was implementing those harmful tactics.
Well, I stand with you on that. I think that's very important. So much of this burden over this past year has fallen on our children, and it needs to end. We have to correct quickly because it's such a massive experiment on our kids who
Go ahead.
I'm
sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I want everybody to know how important and significant this topic is of protecting our children. You've heard me say, in any video and all of my posts, faith, family, freedom, that's critically important. I believe that our children are under attack, our most vulnerable. There's two most vulnerable portions of our society, our children and our senior citizens. Right now, our children are under attack, and it is a primary focus for me to not only protect them with regards to the vaccine, not only in the physical setting of school, but also in the curriculum. So obviously, critical race theory. I talk to teachers that are teaching third graders, and they're demonstrating masturbation techniques. They're having them question their sexuality. This is an assault on our children, and as a father of 5, it's one thing that I'm going to champion all the way through. It's something that is at the core, at the center, at the nucleus of why I'm doing this.
Let's talk about school choice. We have a massive issue in California where not only now so many children have literally been pushed out of the public education system due to the legislation that passed with 277, 276, 714, but we also have a massive union issue in California that is hostile toward the choice of parents. It's extremely hostile toward charter schools. In 2019, the state's biggest teachers union spent more than $1 million a month from April to August to influence lawmakers as it pushed bills aimed at cracking down on charter schools. That was $3.6 million that they spent lobbying against charter schools. What is your position on how you would deal with the union issue in California when it comes to our schools and then school choice?
Yeah, so the unions haven't been met with the appropriate opposition, and that's a problem. We have very weak leadership in our elected with our elected officials. I continue to say we send sheep into the snake pit. We need to send more lions. We have people that don't like conflict, that have special interests, that bow down to big unions. I've spent my entire life fighting against corporations, against attorneys, against lawyers. I know what it is to fight. I think that school choice is essential right now, but I say this often, look, school choice is, the need for school choice is basically treating a symptom to a bigger problem, right? Parents want the ability to send their kids to the appropriate schools, homeschool them. They want the money to follow the child, which I agree with 100%. That needs to happen. But what's happening is that that's a byproduct of a bigger problem. Our whole infrastructure, our education system is broken. And so I believe that we need school choice. I believe that the finances should follow the child, and parents should have options as a temporary solution, as a fixing the symptom, treating the symptom. But at the core problem is just the school system itself. If we don't fix our community schools, and if we don't make them more desirable, we're going to lose a sense of community. The more people have to take their children out of their community to go to school or homeschool them, the less of a community we create. So I believe that school choice and funds following the children is essential right now. But I think we need to really focus in on what's broken with our education system and fix it so that we can start to build a sense of community and neighborhood again. Otherwise, we're not going to have a sustainable society.
Amen, brother. I like what you're saying. I agree with you. Okay, let's shift into talking about the economy a little bit. You ready for that?
Sure.
Okay. Massive issue in California. There are all these massive issues. So clearly California is a dumpster fire right now. So are you ready to get your hands dirty?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the big problems we have, especially it escalated throughout the last year, is big businesses, entrepreneurs, and small businesses fleeing California because we've got tax issues, we got regulation issues. The California Policy Center has cataloged at least 50 large corporations that left California since 2014. Vast majority left between 2019 and 2020 under Gavin Newsom. How are you going to correct that problem, and not only correct it, but reverse it to bring businesses back to the land of gold?
So I was one of those companies about to leave. I was going to take my company, my tax-paying dollars, and our employees, most of them, with me when I left. It's a huge problem. California is not business friendly. The big white lie that's being told is that, and a lot of politicians that are even running, they have these tax reform programs that say, hey, we're going to eliminate taxes for everybody that makes either $100,000 or $200,000 or $250,000. So that's kind of like the Robin Hood mentality, right? We're going to hurt the rich and we're going to give to the poor. But let me explain how that is so inherently flawed. If we create a state that is driving out big business, high net worth individuals, if they leave and they take their companies and they take their jobs with them, they take their tax dollars with them as well. And then what happens is that it puts unnecessary burden on the middle class. So the idea isn't, you don't punish the job creators, you don't punish those that are generating wealth, you don't punish those that are actually paying higher taxes. You incentivize them to stay, to continue to pay their taxes. You incentivize them to stay, to continue to create jobs. Because if they leave, then all of that tax burden gets put on the middle class. So what I would do is my goal is to eliminate our income tax. And there's two ways that I want to go about doing that. Number one, we're going to do a massive audit of our expenditures, right? Just like I would if we were to acquire a company. We would look at what we're spending our money on, and we would eliminate any and all projects that are not benefiting the greater good of Californians. We would then renegotiate all of our contracts. This is what I do extremely well. We'd renegotiate all of our contracts. We'd kill certain contracts, renegotiate others. And we would basically reduce our overhead and our costs, right? So that's going to get us part of the way there. If we can reduce our costs, renegotiate our contracts, kill projects that are not benefiting the majority of our citizens, we can generate a good portion of that revenue. The second part of it is to now allow California to be a revenue generating state. How do we do that? So we're looking at things like legalizing gambling, a travel tax, but more innovative than that. And I come from the ad industry, so something that most people don't know, $187 billion a year are spent in California alone just for advertising. These are big corporations outside of California that advertise within California because they want your eyes, your ears, and your dollars, right? So I understand the value of California dollars and attention, so I would tax it. So we take that $187 billion and we tax it by just 10%. That's $18 billion of new revenue that didn't exist yesterday, right? But we tax it by 20%, and I think I could do it because these companies will not stop advertising. We're their lifeblood, we're their lifeline, right? So we tax it by 20%. You're looking at $36 billion in new revenue. So just those two simple things alone, renegotiating our contracts, killing projects that don't benefit the majority of Californians, reduce our overhead, and then we start making money by thinking innovatively like an entrepreneur would, and all of a sudden we're reducing our costs and we're generating money. I'm confident that we could dramatically reduce, if not eliminate, all of our income tax. That
so just
alone
let me interrupt you real quick, because it's coming up in the comments. You're not talking about a travel tax. Can you just clarify for people who might be misunderstanding what exactly you're referring to in this tax idea?
Sure. In all of my measures, Californians remain unaffected by it. So, for instance, the advertising tax wouldn't affect corporations that were in California advertising to Californians. And the travel tax and really the hospitality tax are for people traveling to California. So if you can imagine, you have a Floridian family that's coming to Anaheim because they want to go to Disneyland. Are they not going to come because there's a 10 or 15% tax now on that hotel room? It's irrelevant. It would not impact our travel industry at all, and it would not apply to any Californians. So it's basically looking at California as a business and monetizing it. California is valuable. Our soil is valuable. Our dollars are valuable. Our people are valuable. But we're not leveraging that to corporations and entities outside of California. And we'll do that. We'll monetize the value, and we'll finally create value for who we are and the buying power that we have. But those are just two simple ways. Those are just two quick, simple ways. We're working on a more comprehensive package than that to basically make California more business friendly by incentivizing companies to come back and maybe giving them a 3 to 5 year tax break to actually, for some of these corporations like a Tesla to come back or a Toyota to come back. We'll work with them to incentivize them to get back. I believe that a lot of those companies that left didn't want to leave. They left reluctantly, and they would welcome an opportunity to come back and create jobs again. I also want to create, if you think about destinations, America is the best place in the world to be. California is the best place in America. But we're not hospitality friendly. So we have plans in place to actually focus on creating a hospitality friendly state where people want to come, they want to visit, they want to spend their dollars. And we just want to revive California. So there are a lot of ways, and as a business owner, it's a priority for me to not only get businesses to stay in California, to thrive in California, but I definitely want businesses to come back to California.
And I think that segues nicely into unemployment. Unemployment is another increasing problem, especially after the last year here in California. We, right now, under the leadership of California, it's kind of that handout, like, let's just keep handing out money and throw a few lotteries in, and we'll see what happens. And it's not going well. It's not going well at all.
Yeah.
A few facts. Jobless claims in California, as they're continuing to grow, workers filed 74,625 initial claims for unemployment benefits during the week that ended on May 29th. That was an increase of 3,750 compared with the week ending on May 22nd. That is insane. Workers filed 71,055 jobless claims in May, according to the U.S. Labor Department. That's crazy, and that's a recipe for disaster. Going back into kind of what you're talking about, the deregulations, about becoming more business friendly, how do you see that in a nutshell of helping with this unemployment issue, going against the grain of what we're doing right now, which is just let's keep sending checks out to everyone?
I can't tell you how many business owners I speak to, especially restaurants, that cannot open their doors right now fully because people are not incentivized to come back to work. They're making more money sitting on the couch than they are actually being productive contributors to society. It's sad. It needs to stop. So I would implement basically a phase-out approach. So if you've been on unemployment for a certain period of time, we're going to give you a very finite period of time to get back into the workforce before we cut you off. We need to disincentivize people not wanting to go back into the workforce. So these unemployment claims are not because people can't find jobs, it's because they're choosing not to work. And that's different. And we need to stand against that. And we need to support our small businesses. And we need to stop incentivizing people for a lack of motivation.
Let's talk about homelessness in California. You ready for this one?
Sure.
We're just moving along. Nearly half of all Americans sleeping on the streets right now in America. Do you know that they're in California? Is that a
Yeah,
crazy
it's
stat?
nuts. It's
That's
nuts.
crazy.
I mean,
So the,
if you were homeless though, I mean, you can see why California is such a draw.
it's not too
It's
Venice Beach.
California. Venice Beach. Look at
Venice Beach.
beachfront property, $0 a month.
Not too bad. Almost half, so 47% of all unsheltered homeless people in the US are found in California. That's about 4 times as high as their share of the overall US population. This is from the Action Institute. Obviously, high cost of living, the tax increase, rising unemployment, poor planning. We also have a lot of veterans in California.
Hmm.
Under Newsom, well, let's just talk about Newsom real quick. So he ran San Francisco literally into the dumpster. I was in San Francisco years ago. I'm born and bred California, love California, same as you, don't want to flee California. I remember going to Fisherman's Wharf up in San Francisco years ago and being so impressed with it, and went back just a couple years ago and was shocked at how it has fallen from glory. And that was under Gavin Newsom before he took California by the horns. And he has done the same thing to California with failed policy after failed policy after failed policy as he did to Sacramento or to San Francisco. So what is your approach to this homeless problem that we have coast to coast in California?
Yeah, so it's sad, and we've spoken to a big veteran coalition and realized how rampant the problem is with our vets as well. So we're incredibly pro vet, and that's going to be a primary focus for us as well. And we'll be coming out with some policy on that. But as far as homelessness in general, our mayors suck. Our mayors are weak. Yeah. Our mayors are not doing their job, and they're not being choked out enough financially to actually disincentivize this approach they're taking. I mean, if I'm in Orange County, so I'm close to LA, and the problem is as big, in LA as anywhere in the country. And it's just sad. Our mayors are not doing their job. I would restrict funding. I would immediately stop any and all support for these mayors. I put them on a program and basically be a merit system and get them to clean up their streets. But the thing that I would do on day one is what I've been doing as a philanthropist for the last 20 years, which is right now from San Diego to San Francisco, there are good nonprofit church-based organizations with feet on the street. One in LA in particular has 20,000 volunteers mobilized, ready with social workers, mental health workers, ready to clothe, feed, and house a lot of our homeless population. But these people don't get attention, they don't get support, and they don't get government funding. So the first thing I would do, rather than reinvent the wheel with your tax dollars, is I would immediately get these people to the table. I would teach them how to look at their operation as a company and scale it. And then we would fund them and support them and allow them to do the good work that they're already doing on a volunteer basis. I think that is the quickest and fastest way to address the problem immediately while we work with our mayors to actually get them to actually do their job.
I like that that is a two-pronged approach, that you're focusing on the issue of local government and then also the faith community and stepping in and helping. I think that is powerful, and that's a really strong approach. Let's talk about law and order. Second Amendment comes up a ton. What is your position on the Second Amendment? And then just to give a tiny background for California, our gun control laws are among the most restrictive in the country. 10-day waiting periods, limits on who may own a firearm. Rifles can't be shorter than 16 inches. There's all these magazine capacity limits. Just to buy a gun or to have a conceal and carry right now in California is virtually impossible. What's your position on all this?
Pro Second Amendment, 100%. I have friends and family that are in law enforcement. I understand the importance and significance of being able to protect my own family. I purchased more guns over the last 12 months than I have in my entire life. It's one of our 5 God-given inalienable rights, the ability to defend oneself. And so I think that, especially when we have a lot of lawlessness and crime, restricting a citizen's ability to actually protect him or herself and their family is completely un-American. And so we need to look at the restrictions and some of these new laws that are passed. We need to start rolling them back, and we need to start making it easier for law-abiding citizens to actually carry.
I agree. What about the border crisis? Let's move into that. still focusing on law and order.
Yeah.
The border crisis, especially Southern California, we've got this border in San Diego. Throughout the last year, we saw an increase in the people coming over. We had the whole convention center in San Diego that was taken over by illegals who had come through and had to be housed. We have taxpayer funding for illegal immigrants' health care, even legal representation in San Diego. California as a whole has been kind of deemed a sanctuary state under Newsom. So what's your view on immigration, on the border crisis? I know Abbott is in Texas. He's building a wall because it stopped under the current administration. So just all of that, kind of just to get you talking about your view on immigration and the border.
Thankfully, I get to speak from a perspective that I think will resonate with more people than normal politicians, because I reflect the diversity that exists in California. So my grandfather, fled communist Cuba, but he came legally and became a U.S. citizen. I believe we need to have a strong border and stiff immigration laws, period. I often tell people, look, I'm Christian, even heaven has gates. And what does that mean? It means that heaven is a welcoming place. The United States should be a welcoming place. California should be a welcoming place. But there's process and protocol to everything. And so the idea that people can just come illegally and abuse our laws and violate our laws and put unnecessary burdens on our taxpayers is completely absurd. It's un-American. I, as a business owner over the years, have been able to employ many people who are on student visas that then they transfer into work visas. And several of them, a good 30% of those people, for one reason or another, don't get their work visas renewed. And we've had to say goodbye to incredibly talented, quality people because they did not want to violate our laws. And so they willingly leave the country because their visas have expired. So the idea that people will come to our country, violate those laws, and abuse those rights is something that we cannot stand for and that we need to be strict on. And that's exactly what I'll do. But it's interesting because this is a topic where, as a Hispanic, I can actually have a healthy dialogue with the Hispanic community about this because I'm reflective of that immigrant story. You put this same message in the mouth of a traditional politician or a celebrity that cannot connect with the diversity that exists in California, and it's going to fall on deaf ears. I am the one that can bring this message forward.
So give it to me in a nutshell. What would be your approach with the current crisis at the border in San Diego, just tangibly? What, if tomorrow you're governor, what are you going to do practically, immediately, to start to reverse the course that's been corroding over the last few years under Newsom and has really escalated under the current administration?
We would no longer be a sanctuary state. We would identify, first of all, there's a process here. We'd lock our border down, right, and ensure that we would minimize or stop completely illegal immigration and these people that are getting into our state illegally. But then we have a surplus of individuals that are here illegally, and there's a whole nother subset of problems that we have to deal with that. It's quite simple. The people that are here illegally and have committed a crime would go on day one. For me, somebody who's come to this country illegally and then broken our laws needs to leave our country immediately. As far as the people that are here illegally, once we shut down our border and once we implement strict border control, we need to have those people identified. They have a certain period of time to actually identify themselves, get into a system. They have to be in school or contributing members of society, paying taxes, and have a job. And then we would look at a period of time to actually allow them the ability to continue to be in this country as long as they continue to obey our laws and to be taxpayers and or students. But ultimately, I believe that there has to be some level of compassion, because if we took a very extreme right approach with, on day one, we're going to just round everybody up and evict them from our state, no Republican will ever get voted into office with that ideology. We have to create a middle. We have to create
Well,
a
and
middle.
it's a complex issue
Yeah.
because in California we have so many who came over here as babies, you know,
Yep.
and this is
Yep.
home, and so that it complicates things because you do have a lot of illegal immigrants who have lived here their whole life and view California as home and are taxpayers, but they are in a catch because in order to go the legal process, it is such a mess that they're then leaving their family and their life for unpredictable numbers of years in a country they never knew. So that is a complex issue, but that doesn't excuse the problem that we currently have in just opening wide the borders and letting
Correct.
more and more on our taxpayer dollar come in. So
Yeah, I believe that, you know, a lot of those families have suffered hardship to get here, and we do have to have compassion, and
yeah,
we do have to govern with compassion, but we cannot compromise on our pursuit of being a state of laws and a country of
yes,
laws. And because I have experienced firsthand people obeying those laws and having to leave our country, and people not being able to enter our country until they followed the proper protocol and process, I believe that we owe it to those individuals and those families to actually abide by the laws that exist.
agree. And I like your answer. Okay, let's move into a little bit of Florida comparison. And then I want to leave some time for any live questions. And I do have a little list that I pulled from that this community wanted to ask you. So those are going to be the rapid fires where I'm just going to go boom, 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 and we're going to get through as
Sure.
many as we can super fast because I know you're a busy man. But so going into something that just recently happened in Florida was they signed SB 2006 in Florida 2006, and it was legislation that strikes the appropriate balance between protecting one's safety when it comes to public health, but also safeguards personal liberty. So I'm just going to read this to you, and then I want to get your feedback
Sure.
on it for in California. Okay. So this is what DeSantis said. He said, this legislation ensures that legal safeguards are in place so that local governments cannot arbitrarily close our schools or businesses. In Florida, your personal choice regarding vaccinations will be protected and no business or government entity will be able to deny you services based on your decision. This legislation will ensure that neither the state nor local governments can close businesses or keep students out of in-person instruction at Florida schools, except for hurricane emergencies. We don't deal with that in California.
Earthquake.
And caps all local emergency at 7-day increments. We are on, I think, 285 days of a state of emergency unilaterally held up by Gavin Newsom. The legislation also allows the governor of Florida to invalidate a local emergency order if it unnecessarily restricts individual rights or liberties. Additionally, the legislation codifies the prohibition of COVID-19 vaccine passports. Talk to me.
So I would ask DeSantis for a copy of that, and I would sign it, because I think nothing that you said I disagree with. I wholeheartedly agree. It's funny too, when we talk about Florida, there are a lot of policies that DeSantis implemented, and I get asked often, you know, how similar would you be from DeSantis? And my answer to that is simple. Right now, DeSantis is the envy of America. We would make him envious of California. Within a year of being in office, DeSantis's mantra would be, "Let's make Florida California," because I believe he has a lot of good policy, but we're unique and we're special, and I believe that California is a little bit more complicated, a lot more complicated than Florida. So we would use a lot of what he's done as a blueprint. But, you know, say a blueprint for building a single-story home, but in California, you know, we're building a skyscraper. So we'll use that as a foundation, but we'll build on it.
Okay, I appreciate that. I like it. Obviously, I stand pretty strong with that legislation, and this community is made up of a whole lot of conservatives that
it's more protecting our children. I think we can all align. That's what I've constantly said. It doesn't matter if you're Republican, Independent, or Democrat. What this election is about right now is less about party lines. It's about family. It's about protecting our children. It's about protecting our rights. And I believe we can all align on that. We've all been stripped of those liberties, those rights. We've seen and tasted a little bit of what communism looks like. And what we need to do now is not to worry so much about what party you stand for or where you align on that. But let's get back to family first policies. That's what I'm doing.
I agree. Okay, you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Sure.
Okay, so when we go through these, I can't see you. I'm going to go through these questions, but um, I'm going to look at you again. Okay, so as we go through these, I know we only have about 5 minutes left. So I want to just try to get through as many of them as we can. So just sharp, direct answers, and
Yep.
we're going to rip through these. Okay, rapid fire. And then at the very end, before I leave you, I'm going to let you have the final minute for your words to win, and then tell everyone how they can support you and find you. Does
Sure.
that sound good?
Sounds
All
great.
right. We're going to start with some that came in earlier, and we'll get through these fast. Okay, this is a big one. Given your work with large medical industry providers and the current environment of big medicine, big pharma, what plans do you have to not end up bought out by big pharma?
Simple. We don't work with any pharmaceutical companies for that exact reason. We work with hospitals, medical groups, IPAs, physicians directly, and insurance plans. And so we have no ties to the pharmaceutical industry.
Great. How do you intend to go about things in Sacramento when we have a Democratic state assembly and Congress?
The same way I do in business when I have to sit at the table with people who disagree with me. You coerce them, you collaborate with them, and then if need be, you fight them.
Tell us about your spiritual journey and how it will or will not inform how you lead our state.
So I'm Christian. Everything in my life is built on that foundation. My home, my family, my business, everything. I tell everyone in California, look, I understand how diverse California is. We have atheists, we have Muslims, we have any number of religious sects in California. You do not have to be Christian to support this campaign, but you're going to want me to be, because you're going to want to know that I'm pulling from a source that is bigger than me in times of crisis, in times of need, that I actually have an unselfish source that I can go to and pull from. And everything I've achieved in my life, I've done so with my faith at the core, at the center. I've been successful so far. I plan on being successful in Sacramento.
Tell us about your historical hero.
My historical hero, I mean, honestly, I have to say Jesus for a
Give me
thousand different reasons.
Give me an American or a world hero. Yes, I love Jesus. I'm a Christian, but give me one American hero that you admire.
One American hero that I admire. I honestly, I don't know that I can name an American hero that I admire. I definitely think with regard to kind of policy and running, and if I look at the governor role, Ronald Reagan was a huge inspiration for what he did, how he was able to bring people together, and his authenticity.
Great. What is your stance on constitutional carry laws?
They're constitutional laws.
Do you think that we should be able to carry with just openly? What's your thought on that?
I've always said that California needs to crawl before it runs, and so I believe we need to address the Second Amendment. We need to protect it, and we need to kind of loosen the restrictions as a phase one approach. Ultimately, potentially working toward a society in California that would be open to open carry.
Okay, taxpayer-funded abortion.
No.
I liked that. That was direct. I liked it.
Yeah.
View on marriage and family.
View on marriage and family. It's a core principle for me. I met my wife when she was 17. I was 19. We've been together for 26 years. I'm a family man through and through. It's part of my resume. I believe marriage should be between a man and a woman, and that's biblically, foundationally, what I believe.
How do you plan to rein in Antifa and their string of violent attacks?
Consider them a terrorist organization and fight them as such.
What will you do to secure a safe and fair election in California?
I won't.
That would be obviously
Yeah.
after you're in office.
Yeah.
Do you think anything with election reform?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's not any one person's duty. All of us need to band together and get involved in elections, and we need to be involved in voting. And it's nothing that one person's going to solve on their own. But in office, auditing our entire electoral system and ensuring that it's fair moving forward.
Okay, you've got 3 last questions. Trump called out Newsom for lousy forest management. What changes will you make?
Actually manage the forest.
And what do you mean by that? Because I know one of the criticisms has been that we are so hyper for nature in California that we won't go in and we won't do
Yeah.
anything that would harm a forest. So
Yeah, so
what do you say?
I'm a conservationist of humanity over nature, and I believe that anything that impedes on our ability to be a free society, living safely, nothing should supersede that. So I understand the importance of conservation of our great state and protecting its natural resources, but ultimately our people come first, and a lot of the policies that exist are not people friendly and they're special interest friendly.
Okay, two last questions. What are your views on the water and power issues in California?
I have incredible solutions for the water and power. They're innovative. I'm working with engineers and inventors and CEOs right now that are bringing forth technology that will harness solar power at a fraction of the cost, turn it into hydrogen. The result of the hydrogen generators is atomic water, which is clean drinking water. We have incredible solutions that I cannot wait to make public.
I like that. Okay, last question before I give you the final floor is what about ending dumping fresh water into ocean and ending geoengineering?
Yeah, that's part of looking at the water problem. Allocation, distribution, management. That's all part of the water and energy solution that I'll be actually making public within the next couple of weeks.
Great. Okay, here's your last question from me, and then you have the floor to finish us out. Tomorrow, you are governor of California. What are you immediately focused on in terms of beginning this correction, redemption, restoration of California? What is at the top of your focus, your to-do list?
Because some things will take longer than others, my primary focus on day one will be protecting our children. So I'll be focusing on what's happening in the schools, and I'll be the curriculum, and I'll be focusing on vaccines. I'll be ensuring that we have the ability to protect our medical freedoms. So any forced vaccinations, the idea of forcing workers to vaccinate before they go back to work, mask mandates, vaccine passports, I will work on day one to eliminate anything that has been put forth, reverse anything, stop anything, because I believe that is the feedback that I get from most people right now is how scared they are about how overreaching government is with regards to their healthcare and their children. So those would be my primary focus: healthcare, children, everything else will be secondary, but just as important.
I appreciate that, and I really like your answer. I'm going to tell you that.
Awesome.
So thank you so much for spending, 45 minutes with this community.
Yeah.
I know you're busy, and that means so much to this community. You're a straight shooter. I appreciate that. And thanks for letting me grill you.
I think you had a little fun with it too, but that's good.
Did you sweat? Did I make you sweat just a little bit?
You'll
learn.
If we ever get an opportunity to meet, you'll understand that I'm incredibly authentic, real, and raw. I have nothing to hide, so these answers are not scripted. You did not give me a single question in advance. I didn't know what you were going to ask me. So everything that you heard me say was just authentic and
that is truth. You speak the truth. Okay, so first of all, how can people find you and support you and follow you? And then the last thing, I'm going to let you close us out to give us your final words to win, and then we'll say our goodbye.
Yeah. So you can find out more about what we're doing, and you can get involved by going to anthonytrimino.com. So anthonytrimino.com. You can also follow me on Instagram, and @Trimino is my handle, as well as Twitter. At the end of the day, I believe that, our freedoms and our liberties are being attacked. I believe that what we need now more than ever is not traditional thinking or a traditional solution. I don't think we need more politicians. I don't think we need any celebrities. I think we need an innovator. We need someone who's entrepreneurial, who sees things from a different perspective. We need someone who understands what it's like not to have these freedoms and liberties. My family knows what it's like to flee a communist country where those liberties are stripped from them. I have intimate knowledge of that. I have friends and family that are currently living in Cuba, and I know what it's like not to have any of these freedoms. I have intimate knowledge. We also have a border issue, and that message is no better communicated than in someone of Hispanic heritage. At the end of the day, we need to protect our children. Our children are under attack. Our medical freedoms are under attack. First, Second Amendment are under attack. And we need somebody to go in there that's different, that's an outsider, that's not accustomed or beholden to politicians, to corporations, or to special interests. And that's exactly what I am. And I want everybody to understand this. This is critically important. I have absolutely nothing to gain by running for office. I'm not a career politician, so this is not a lateral move for me. I'm not, I'm not somebody that works for corporate America where this would be a step up or a raise for me. I'm not a celebrity where this would be good for my career. I'm telling you, I have nothing to gain by doing this. It's just my heart. My heart is for California. I want to see change. I want to bring change. I want to be the solution that we need. I want to go in there, reverse things, fix things, and then hand it over to the next generation of somebody who is relevant for that time. And I'll say that I've often said I may not have been the candidate for 20 years ago, and I won't be the candidate for 20 years from now, but I do believe I'm the candidate for today.
Well, I appreciate your answers, your vision, you spending the time with us. Again, for those of you who want to look more into this great candidate, AnthonyTrimino.com. It's ANTHONY. Trimino is TRIMINO.com. And then you can also follow him on Instagram. And I think you said your handle was at @Trimino. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And then this interview is saved. We have a massive algorithms up against this account. It's expected. It's an election season. It's what happens. But feel free to screen record, share like crazy. If you like this candidate, if you think he's the real deal and he could offer a future for California and for our children, get the word out about him. Start sharing this interview, share portions of the interview that really meant something to you, and get the word out about Anthony, because we're up against the time at this point, really, to get his name well known and become a household name before September 14th. So with that, Anthony, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for all your questions. And I'm going to let you go. Keep doing your thing. And I would love to have you on again as we get closer for a follow-up.
Yeah, I want you to invite me on when you're off the fence and when you're on Team Trimino. Then we'll have a conversation.
Okay, that's a deal.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.